go ahead. Stop with the channel surfing. Take a break. Listen to a story. I've got a story that, well, it's actually a Christmas story. It's called The Christmas Apple. It's a story from a storytelling librarian by the name of Ruth Sawyer. You could find it in her collection of The Way of the Storyteller, available through your local library. And you know, Christmas stories don't have to be told only at Christmas. And this is the tale of the Christmas apple. Long, long ago, in a great city in Germany, there was a cathedral. It was a beautiful, beautiful cathedral with a soaring nave and a spire that went way into the sky. And this cathedral was filled inside with beautiful statues and artwork. The pews were carved from the finest wood. But that wasn't why this cathedral was known far and wide. No, it was for a statue that was in that cathedral. It was a statue of Mary, the mother of Jesus, and she held in her hands the baby Jesus himself. And there was a story with that statue. It was said that if a person was ever to lay a gift at the foot of that statue, that was a gift given from the purest heart and for the purest of reasons, that the baby Jesus himself would reach down and take it from the giver. Now, no one had ever seen this happen, but it was a story that was told every year because it had become a tradition in this city that the people at Christmas time, they would bring their gifts to lay at the foot of the statue in hopes that baby Jesus would lean down and take it from their hands. Oh, such fine, fine gifts there were. Artists brought their most wonderful paintings. Illustrators, the most incredibly illuminated manuscripts. Jewelers and goldsmiths, their finest pieces. Carvers, their grandest pieces of wood. Now, in this city, there lived many people, but one of those people was a little clockmaker. His name was Hans Joseph. And Hans Joseph, he had a little shop in one of the narrow streets in the city. And he had a little window in his shop with a shelf in front of it. And it was there that he liked to put his latest clock, that people might want to buy it. And inside his little shop, the walls were covered with clocks, all kinds of clocks. Big clocks, little clocks, metal clocks, wood clocks, ceramic clocks, clocks that cuckooed, clocks that chimed, all sorts of clocks. But there was one clock in Hans Joseph's shop. Oh, there was one clock. He had been working on it for many, many years. It was a great, beautiful carved wooden clock. And when the hours struck on the face made of marble, a little door would open. And on the first hour, out would come a dove. And the second hour, a sheep. And the third hour, a donkey. And so on until finally came to the 12th hour, and it would be the baby Jesus in his cradle would come out of the clock. Oh, such a magnificent clock. You know, Hans Joseph was planning to give this clock to the statue in the cathedral. And this was the year that he had finished his clock. It was ready to be gifted to the baby Jesus. Oh, he'd been working on his clock so hard and so focused. He hadn't had time to be selling his other clocks. So as the cathedral bells started to chime to call the people to Mass for Christmas Eve, he looked around and he thought, oh, well, here, I'm ready to go. And he picked up the clock, and just as he did, there was a knock on the door. And when he opened it, it was Trudy. Trudy, who lived next door to him. And he'd known her since she was a little girl with a broken doll that she would bring to him to be mended. He never took any money for it. Or perhaps she had a pan of her mother's that had a hole in it. And would he fix it? And of course he would, and he never took any money for it. But on this night, Trudy was crying. Oh, I don't know what to do. My husband, he's been injured. We have no money for the doctor. What little we had, it's gone. And I have no money now to give my children any Christmas. No tree, no roast, no presents, nothing. Well, that's okay, said Hans Joseph. You let me take care of it. You go home with your children. I will see what I can do. He went back into his house. And there was a fine clock sitting there on the shelf in the window that led out on the street. And he took that clock. He thought, surely someone needs a clock. And he went to all the fine houses on the square, and he knocked on the door and asked them, a clock for sale? Would you like to buy this fine clock? Give a family a bit of Christmas. But nobody wanted his clock. Finally, he knocked on the door of Herr Schmidt, the richest man in town. And when Herr Schmidt opened the door and Hans Joseph said, a clock, Herr Schmidt, please? Would you like to buy a clock to give some children at Christmas? Herr Schmidt said, I would like to buy a clock, Hans Joseph, but not that clock. I want that clock you've been building all these years. I will give you 1,000 gold pieces for that clock. Oh, no, not that clock, please, said Hans Joseph. Please, not that clock. That one or none, take it or leave it. And Hans Joseph, he thought about Trudy and her children and her husband who had been injured, and his heart broke for them. All right, but I can't take 1,000 gold pieces. 1 gold piece will buy Christmas for the family. And so he returned to his shop with Herr Schmidt behind him. Herr Schmidt took that great clock. That clock that Hans Joseph had put his life into these past years, and gave him his gold piece, and Herr Schmidt left. And Hans Joseph, he took that gold piece, and he went to the market, and he got a tree, and he got a chicken, and he got some presents for the children, and he came back to the house and gave them to Trudy next door. Oh, Hans Joseph, thank you. Thank you. It's nothing, he says. It's nothing. After giving Trudy and her family their Christmas, Hans Joseph went into his little shop. I thought, I've gone to the cathedral empty-handed before. I can go again. And he opened up the cupboard, and inside was a crust of bread and an apple. There's my dinner. And he tucked the apple into his pocket, and he chewed on the crust of bread as he made his way through the streets full of people, all of them going to the cathedral. And when he got to the cathedral and walked in, the scent of the greens and the incense wafted over him, and the sound of the choir. There were 1,000 voices in the nave. It was so beautiful and packed with people. And the statue of Mother Mary holding baby Jesus in her arms, it was covered, the foot of it was covered with elegant gifts from all over the world, spices from the far east, works of art that were unimaginable. And as Hans Joseph had made his way up the aisle, all of a sudden it was quiet. People were looking at him. Many people knew about that clock that Hans Joseph had been working on all these years, and said, look at him. He comes empty-handed. What about that clock he was making? He probably sold it for a lot of money or something. Shame on him. Hans Joseph couldn't look. He made his way to the foot of the statue, and he reached in his pocket where that apple was, and he pulled it out and he held it up to set it on the ledge of the statue, when suddenly there was a gasp, and he looked up in time to see the baby Jesus reach down and take from his hands the Christmas